The Mercedes-Benz dealership gleamed under the afternoon sun, all glass and chrome and carefully curated luxury. Inside, the showroom displayed the latest S-Class sedans, AMG performance vehicles, and limited-edition models that cost more than most people's houses. David Mitchell walked through the automatic doors at 2 p.m. on a Saturday, the busiest day of the week for car sales. He was dressed casually, Nike hoodie, jeans, and Jordans, having just come from his nephew's basketball game. But he was ready to make a purchase, ready to finally treat himself after years of building his investment firm from a small startup to a multi-million-dollar operation. The showroom was busy. Sales associates moved between customers, their attention focused on couples in designer clothes, businessmen in suits, families who looked like they belonged in this world of six-figure automobiles. David walked directly to a black S-Class sedan, running his hand along the hood. The window sticker showed $127,000. He'd researched this exact model, knew the specs, had already decided on the color and interior options he wanted. He waited for a sales associate to approach. One walked past, making eye contact briefly before continuing to a white couple examining an SUV. Another passed by, phone to his ear, not acknowledging David's presence. A third actually made a small detour to avoid coming near him. David had experienced this before. The invisible treatment. The assumption that a black man in casual clothes couldn't possibly be a serious buyer. Usually, he'd push past it, demand service, make them help him. Today, he decided to wait, to see how long it would take for someone to acknowledge his existence. 15 minutes passed. David stood by the S-Class, occasionally opening the door to sit inside, checking the features, clearly interested. Sales associates continued to walk past. Some glanced at him nervously. Others pretended not to see him at all. Finally, a young associate approached, probably early 20s, new enough that he hadn't learned to profile customers yet, or desperate enough for sales that he couldn't afford to be picky. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone polite but uncertain. "Yes," David said. "I'm interested in this S-Class." "Can you tell me about the available packages?" The young man, his name tag read Ryan, pulled out a tablet. "Sure. This is our 2024 S5804 MATIC. It has the premium package, driver assistance package, and—" "Ryan!" A voice cut across the showroom. A man in his 50s, thick-necked and red-faced, was gesturing urgently. "I need you with the Hendersons." "They're ready to close on the GLE." Ryan glanced between David and his manager. "I'm with a customer. The Hendersons are ready to buy. Now." Ryan looked apologetic. "Sir, I'm sorry. Let me just help close this deal and I'll be right back." "How long will that take?" "Maybe 20 minutes?" David nodded. "I'll wait." 20 minutes turned to 40. David watched Ryan with the Henderson family, going over financing options, discussing trade-in values, negotiating prices. The manager appeared multiple times, expediting the process, clearly prioritizing this sale. Meanwhile, David stood alone by the S-Class. Sales associates continued to avoid him. At the hour mark, David pulled out his phone and opened the calculator app. Base price $127,000. Add the packages he wanted, another $15,000. Tax, title, license, roughly $150,000 total. Cash purchase, no financing needed. He could afford it easily. His investment firm had cleared $8 million in profit last year alone. He drove a 5-year-old Honda Civic because he'd been too busy building his business to care about cars. But now, with his nephew's high school graduation coming up and a promise to take the kid on a road trip, David wanted something nice. This S-Class was perfect. Comfortable, prestigious, loaded with technology. He was ready to buy it today, if anyone would bother to sell it to him. At 90 minutes, Ryan finally returned, looking harried. "Sir, thank you so much for waiting. Where were we?" "You were about to tell me about the packages," David said patiently. "Right, so the premium package includes—" "Ryan," the manager again. "I need you to prep the GLS for the Thompsons. They're coming in 10 minutes for a test drive." Ryan's face fell. "Steve, I'm in the middle. The Thompsons are VIP clients. This is priority." David watched the exchange with growing amusement. After 2 hours in this dealership, not a single experienced sales associate had approached him. Ryan, the junior guy, kept getting pulled away to support actual sales. The message was clear. David wasn't a priority, wasn't a real customer, wasn't worth anyone's time. "You know what?" David said. "Don't worry about it. I can see you're busy. Sir, please, just give me 5 minutes. It's fine, really." David smiled, but there was an edge to it. "I'll take my business elsewhere." He walked out. Behind him, he heard Ryan arguing with his manager, something about losing a customer. But Steve's dismissive response carried, "He wasn't buying anything anyway." People like that are just lookers. People like that. David sat in his Honda Civic for a moment, anger and exhaustion mixing. He'd built a successful business, had more money than he knew what to do with, could write a check for that S-Class without checking his balance. But to the sales team at this dealership, he was just another black guy in casual clothes, not a real customer, not worth their time. He pulled up his phone and searched for luxury car dealerships near me. The results showed another Mercedes dealership 20 miles away, a BMW dealership, an Audi dealer, and, interesting, Elite Motors, a boutique dealership specializing in high-end pre-owned luxury vehicles. But David had a different idea forming, one that would make his point more effectively than any single car purchase. He scrolled through his contacts and called his attorney, Margaret Chen. "David." "What's up?" "Maggie, how would you feel about helping me acquire a business?" "What kind of business?" David looked back at the gleaming Mercedes showroom. A car dealership. 3 weeks later, David sat in a conference room with Maggie and a team of financial advisors reviewing the purchase agreement for Premier Auto Group, the parent company of 5 luxury dealerships in the region, including BMW, Lexus, and Mercedes-Benz franchises. The Mercedes dealership where David had been ignored wasn't part of Premier Auto Group. It was independently owned by Steve Harrington, the same Steve who'd been Ryan's manager, the man who'd dismissed David as not a real customer. Premier Auto Group was struggling. Poor management, declining sales, customer service complaints. The owner wanted out, and David, with his investment capital and business acumen, was positioned to acquire it for $12 million. A steal, considering the property values and franchise agreements alone were worth more. "You're sure about this?" Maggie asked. "This is outside your usual investment strategy." "I'm sure," David said. "Besides, I've been looking to diversify, and I have some ideas about how to run a dealership better." The purchase closed 30 days later. David became the owner of 5 luxury dealerships, including the Mercedes-Benz location directly across the street from Steve Harrington's independent dealership. David's first move was hiring a new general manager, James Wilson, a black man with 20 years of automotive sales experience who'd been consistently passed over for promotions at major dealerships because he didn't fit the culture. His second move was implementing a strict anti-discrimination policy. Sales associates who profiled customers would be fired immediately. Customer service would be measured not by closing rates, but by how every customer was treated. His third move was aggressive marketing. Luxury cars for everyone. No judgment, no profiling, just great service and fair prices. The response was immediate. Customers of color who'd been ignored or mistreated at other dealerships started coming to David's locations. Word spread through communities that had been systematically excluded from luxury automotive retail. Within 3 months, David's dealerships were outperforming projections. Sales were up 30%. Customer satisfaction scores had skyrocketed. And across the street, Steve Harrington's dealership was feeling the impact. David was in his downtown office when James called. "You're not going to believe this. Steve Harrington just walked into our dealership asking to speak with the owner." David smiled. "Tell him I'm available this afternoon." 3 p.m. At 3 o'clock sharp, Steve Harrington walked into David's conference room. He'd aged visibly in the few months since David had been in his showroom, more gray hair, deeper lines around his eyes, the look of a man watching his business collapse. "Mr. Mitchell," Steve began, not recognizing him, "thank you for seeing me." "Of course. Have a seat." Steve settled into a chair, his discomfort obvious. "I'll be direct. Your dealership is killing my business. You've taken market share I can't afford to lose. I came to see if we could discuss some kind of accommodation." Accommodation? Territory agreements. Pricing strategies. Maybe we could work together instead of competing so aggressively. David leaned back in his chair. "Tell me, Mr. Harrington, do you remember me?" Steve's brow furrowed. "I don't think we've met." "We have. About 4 months ago. I walked into your Mercedes showroom on a Saturday afternoon. I stood by an S-Class for 2 hours. Your sales team ignored me. And you specifically pulled your only associate who tried to help me away to handle other customers." The blood drained from Steve's face. You were the black guy in the Nike hoodie, the one you said wasn't buying anything anyway. People like that are just lookers, remember?" Steve's mouth opened and closed. I didn't mean." "You did mean it. You looked at me and decided I couldn't afford a Mercedes, decided I wasn't worth your team's time, decided that based purely on my appearance. Mr. Mitchell, I apologize. If I'd known who you were—" "That's exactly the problem," David interrupted. "You shouldn't need to know who I am. You should treat every customer with respect regardless of who they are or what they look like." Steve slumped in his chair. "You bought these dealerships to hurt me." "No. I bought these dealerships because they were a good investment, but I admit, competing with you has been satisfying." "What do you want?" "You want me to apologize? To admit I was wrong? Fine. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Can we move past this?" David stood, walking to the window overlooking the city. "Here's what I want, Steve. I want you to understand that you didn't just insult me that day. You revealed a pattern, a system, an entire culture that excludes people who don't fit your narrow definition of customer." He turned back. "How many black customers have you ignored? How many Latino families, Asian buyers, anyone who didn't show up in a suit and a BMW? How much business have you lost because you were too busy profiling to sell cars?" Steve had no answer. "I'm not interested in territory agreements or price fixing or any kind of accommodation. I'm interested in competing fairly and letting customers choose. And you know what? They're choosing my dealerships. Not because I'm undercutting you, because we treat people with respect. You're going to put me out of business. You put yourself out of business. You just didn't realize it until now." Steve stood, his face a mix of anger and defeat. "You know what? You're right. I've been in this business 30 years and I got lazy, got comfortable, started treating it like a private club instead of a business, and you're making me pay for that." It was more honesty than David had expected. "What happens now?" Steve asked. "Now? You have a choice. You can keep doing business the way you've always done it and watch your dealership slowly fail. Or you can change, train your staff, fix your culture, actually serve all customers instead of just the ones you're comfortable with. Would that be enough? To compete with you?" David shrugged. "I don't know, but it would be the right thing to do." 6 months later, Steve Harrington sold his dealership. The market was too competitive, his reputation too damaged. The buyer was a young black woman named Tasha Williams who'd been saving for years to own a dealership. David offered her advice, mentorship, and partnership opportunities. The luxury automotive market in the region became more diverse, more competitive, and more customer-focused. And that S-Class David had wanted? He bought it from his own dealership. Ryan, the young sales associate who'd tried to help him that day, had moved to David's company and made the sale. "You know," Ryan said as he handed over the keys, "I never forgot about that day. How you waited so patiently while Steve kept pulling me away. How you never got angry or confrontational." "I was angry," David admitted, "but I've learned that revenge is sweeter when it's profitable." Ryan laughed. "Well, you definitely achieved that." David drove off the lot in his new S-Class, the same model he'd tried to buy months earlier. The same car that no one would sell him because they'd assumed he couldn't afford it. The irony was perfect. A year after acquiring the dealerships, David was interviewed for a business magazine. The reporter asked about his unexpected move into automotive retail. "You could have kept your focus on investment and finance. Why dealerships?" David thought about that Saturday afternoon, the dismissive glances, the 2 hours of being invisible. The manager's casual dismissal of him as people like that. Because sometimes the best way to fix a broken system is to own it, he said. And because every black kid who walks into one of my dealerships in a hoodie and sneakers should be treated like the customer they are, not judged by what they're wearing. Is that personal? Very. I was that kid once. Actually, I was that kid 4 months before I bought these dealerships, and the treatment I received showed me exactly what needed to change. The article went viral. David's dealerships became known as the most inclusive in the region. Sales continued to grow. The company expanded, and whenever David drove past Steve Harrington's old location, now Tasha Williams' thriving new dealership, he smiled. Because the best revenge wasn't just succeeding, it was changing the system that had tried to keep him out. 3 years after the initial incident, David stood in his flagship Mercedes dealership, watching his team interact with customers. A young Latino couple, first-time luxury buyers, were being treated like VIPs. An elderly black woman was test-driving an E-Class, the sales associate patiently explaining every feature. A white teenager in a Minecraft t-shirt was sitting in an AMG GT, dreaming of his future. Every customer was treated with respect. Every person who walked through the door was seen as a potential buyer, regardless of appearance. This is what it should have been like that Saturday afternoon when David just wanted to buy a car. His phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. Just closed a deal with a customer who said he specifically came here because his friend was ignored at another dealership. Word is spreading. David replied, "Good. That's exactly the point. Because the real victory wasn't putting Steve Harrington out of business, it was creating something better, building dealerships where everyone was welcome, where wealth didn't have a dress code, where respect was the baseline, not the exception. And if his success hurt discriminatory competitors, well, that was just a pleasant side effect." Later that week, David received an unexpected visitor. Steve Harrington, looking older but somehow lighter, walked into David's office. "Mr. Mitchell, I hope you don't mind me stopping by." "Not at all. Have a seat." Steve sat, nervous but determined. "I wanted to tell you something. After I sold the dealership, I took some time to really think about what you said. About the pattern, the culture, the sabotage, the exclusion." David waited. "You were right, about all of it, and I'm ashamed it took losing my business to see it." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm consulting now. Helping dealerships improve their customer service. And every presentation I give, I tell the story of the customer I ignored and how it cost me everything." Steve pulled out a phone, showing David a slide from his presentation. The title, "The $12 million Customer I Turned Away." "I don't use your name," Steve continued, "but I tell them about a successful businessman who came in ready to buy, got ignored, and ended up buying the competition. Literally buying it." David studied the older man. "Are you asking for forgiveness?" "No. I don't deserve that. I'm asking if what I'm doing makes any difference. If maybe I can prevent other dealers from making my mistake." David considered this. You can't undo what happened. But if you're genuinely helping people change, then yeah, it makes a difference. Steve nodded slowly. "Thank you." "That's all I wanted to know." As he stood to leave, David spoke again. "Steve? That day in your dealership, I wasn't just looking for a car, I was looking for an experience. A transaction where I felt valued and respected. You couldn't see that because you were too busy judging me." "I know." "Good. Don't let other dealers forget it." After Steve left, David pulled up the security footage from that Saturday afternoon 4 years ago. He sometimes watched it as a reminder of how far he'd come, of how much had changed, of why this work mattered. There he was, standing by that S-Class, waiting patiently, being ignored, making a decision that would change everything. Sometimes the best business decisions come from the worst customer service. And sometimes the best revenge is building something so successful that it forces everyone else to be better. If this story resonated with you, remember, discrimination in sales isn't just morally wrong, it's financially stupid. Every customer you judge by appearance is a potential sale you're losing. Every person you dismiss might be the one who changes your entire market. Share this with business owners, sales professionals, anyone in customer service. Remind them that assumptions cost money and respect costs nothing. Subscribe to Real Justice Stories for more tales of discrimination confronted, systems changed, and the unexpected ways that treating people badly can destroy your entire business. Thank you for watching. Remember, the customer you ignore today might buy your competitor tomorrow, or worse, they might become your competitor. Treat everyone with respect. It's not just right, it's survival.